I don't think Megan will last the night out and with yet more Transport Canberra stuff. So thank you for coming along tonight, and I'd like to acknowledge again your time here. So back to the agenda now. Mark's got everything running and rolling, so I will ask Helen if you could just clip this on to speak. Helen is from Environment Planning Sustainable Development Directorate. I'll be talking about the Casey community sites. Yeah, and clicker does the clicker thing.
Oh, I think I've brought too much paper with me. Can everyone hear me, or do I need to use the microphone? You want me to use the mic?
Okay. Clip on too for the online audience.
Oh, all right. Thank you. Thank you, Peter, for having us along tonight. You prefer this?
No, you have to do part of it.
Oh, you have to do
So
both?
this is the joy of being technology. There's the physical world and there's a virtual world.
Oh, this is the virtual world.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you can,
I can just
and
hold
it's ridiculous,
this.
and in a perfect world we'd have just if clip on is usually
There we
good.
go. All right, there we go.
You're on fire.
Okay, you can hear me now?
Yep.
So thank you for having us along tonight. My name's Helena Seagrott. I'm from the Environment Planning and Sustainable Development Directorate. I'll use both, so you're well covered for sound. I'm here tonight to talk about 2 blocks that we're preparing to release in the Casey Group Centre. I just wanted to know if there's anyone here tonight who frequently goes to the Casey Group Centre. Myself included. In fact, I often drive my kids 20 minutes to come up to Casey Group Centre because I really enjoy shopping here. I think it's a great little shopping centre and covers a lot of bases. So tonight we'll be discussing technology. Am I pointing at the right thing here, Peter? Is it the batteries? Do you just want me to give you a nod when I want the next slide?
Oh yeah.
Thank you. So, okay, just to give you an idea of where the sites are, we've got Casey Market Town here, we've got the large surface car park here, and they're just to the north there. So they're sandwiched between Horse Park Drive and Kingland Parade. Tonight I'm just going to talk about the background of these sites and how we've come to be at the point where we're preparing them for release, and I'll also talk about the next steps. Do you want to do the next slide? Thank you. Thank you. Oh, you're right. So back in about 2010, 2011, the land in the Gungahlin Group Centre was sold to a developer, including Blocks 12 and Blocks 13 in Casey. Since then, there's been obviously a lot of development that's happened in the group centre. We've seen Casey Market Town developed, and we're now at a point where we're waiting for the developer to actually hand back these 2 blocks. So the developer's got these blocks on the condition that they actually service them, and then they hand them back to the ACT government. So then we can make a decision on what uses are most appropriate for them, and then sell them on to a developer who can develop them. So we need to work out what's going to happen on these blocks. There was a deed of agreement that was attached to these blocks when they were sold, and they originally identified that the developer had to hand back 2 1.2 hectare sites, and one of those sites needed to allow for a club and bowling greens. A lot's happened in the 10 years since this deed of agreement was handed over, and obviously the demographics of Casey are now well established. We've got a community there. Also, things have changed in the last 10 years, and is a bowls club the most appropriate site for use for this site? So these are the questions we're going to be asking in the next few months. At the moment, we're getting a couple of technical studies done. So we're preparing a community and recreation needs assessment. We've just got the consultants on board to do that, and we're expecting that they will have their work completed about November. We're also going to do a commercial needs assessment. We're not quite procured the consultant for that because we're waiting to get some benchmarking on retail prepared, and once we've got that, we can then do the commercial needs assessment. After we've got the feedback from those reports, and I'll talk a bit more about those reports and those assessments and what they'll include in a moment, we're going to come out and we'll do community engagement. So what we're hoping to have is a series of recommendations from consultants for what there is actually demand for in these communities, and then we can come back and say, okay, well, what are the uses that the community is actually wanting to see on these sites? And then after that point, hopefully the developer would have handed the sites back to us, and we'll be at a point where we can actually release them to the developer, and then they can be developed for whatever use that's deemed appropriate for them. Next slide, thank you. So the objectives of these assessments is we're wanting some evidence to give us some recommendations on the future demands for the community and recreation facilities and the commercial needs for these two blocks, and also Casey's catchment more broadly. And it's essentially to inform the release of these blocks and what's going to benefit the community, what does the community need most. And next slide. So tonight I'm just really here to inform you about what's happening, and then we'll be coming back to you in early 2020, so early next year, when we've got these reports finalised, to engage more broadly. At this stage I'm thinking we'll do, we found historically engaging with Gungahlin, we get huge response to social media, so we'll do a social media campaign to try and get plenty of feedback, but we'll also do meet the planner sessions within the Casey Group Centre itself, and probably Casey Market Town, and we'll gather as much data on from the community so we can make a decision on the most appropriate uses. And that's me for tonight. Has anyone got any questions? Would you like a microphone? And then I can just be really loud.
Thank you very much for releasing the blogs. Is there any plan to construct a community centre?
That's part of this work, is identifying. So that will be part of this work. The community and recreation facility needs assessment is identifying if there is a need for a community centre, and perhaps it might be combined into like a mixed-use development. So we'll be investigating that as part of this assessment.
Is there any chance that residential will be part of the development?
No.
No residential. What is the block actually zoned for at this time?
CZ1, so CZ1 core zone, and originally the zoning that was put on to give the most amount of opportunities for the site, so a whole variety of uses, but the intent in the deed of agreement is that at least part of these sites is used for the purposes of community facilities.
Okay, yep. One over here.
One over here.
One of the other blocks that we've spoken about previously is the land behind the dog park.
Mm-hmm.
I can see that hasn't been included in the scoping study, which is extremely disappointing, because I think that fits in part of the picture as well. Many years ago there was a commitment for that to be a irrigated playground, so it's disappointing to see it's not part of the scope.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the future plans for that block?
Thank you. So that site, is it section 124, is actually within the study area for both the community and recreation needs and the commercial needs assessment. So it is within that area, and we are specifically, these studies are asking specifically about blocks 12 and 13, but they're also asking more broadly, what are the community needs and recreation needs for the Casey catchment? So that does encompass that site. So we're hoping that we will actually get some feedback through these reports that'll help inform that.
What's the ownership of that site that Mark's just referred to? Is it owned by the government, or is it owned by some other developer in an off-sector?
That's a very good question that I don't know the answer to, but I can find out. Mark might know.
It's government.
It is government owned? Okay.
It's part of sports and rec.
Yep, thank you.
Sorry, I just need to find out where this one located, like probably the...
Can we go back to the one with the, and I'll hop out of the way. So it's just in front of Casey Market Town. So it's just in front of Casey Market Town, and it's sandwiched between Horse Park Drive, so that's Horse Park Drive there, and Kingland Parade, which is just there. So are you familiar with Casey Market Town at all?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the big surface car park out the front, and then you've got that pond sort of thing, and they're just to the north of that. So if you look at them at the moment, they're kind of just grassy. There's a few earth movers there currently. It's all fenced. Yeah, yep.
worth noting that the northern end is going to be residential now.
Yep, that's right.
One, I think. A similar question to Mark's. The block 23 for the Gold Creek Homestead is being, or the second half of the Gold Creek Homestead is being released.
Okay.
This month, I think. It seems a pity not to be incorporating all these things together in the same sort of study.
Okay.
So you might like to
Have a consideration of that.
think about including that.
Okay.
So when you say there's no residences, does that include social housing and old people's homes and things like that?
I'd have to take that question on notice. I'm not sure. So no, I don't have an answer to that tonight, but I can provide an answer via Peter if you'd like. Would that be okay? Yep, I can do that.
So the point around Kevin's raised, there is this other side of the Gold Creek Homestead site coming up, and it is obviously part of the same catchment area. Because quite a lot, Casey gets, by my exhaustive analysis in that I go there, gets a lot of people from 2 or 3 or more suburbs away. So particularly during the time when the town centre was having a lot of works, a lot of people end up going to Casey and just stay there. So it gets a big catchment. All right.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yep, one last one.
Thanks. It's really just for understanding. By your timeline, it looks like a developer purchased the land in 2011, so they outlaid funds, and that land's been sitting dormant for the last 8 years. So I don't know what return on investment they're getting on that, and then they're going to do some stuff, and then is it going to be handed back to you, but then handed back to the same developer or other developers?
No. So yep, in 2010-11, the blocks were sold, so including where Casey Market Town is and a number of other blocks in the group centre was sold to a developer. And the requirement on the developer is, okay, yep, you're going to develop Casey Market Town. These 2 blocks here, what we required of them was you need to service them and hand them back to the ACT government. And then once they hand them back to us, then we on-sell them on, and we can sell them we do land release, which is sales. And we can do that via an auction or a tender process and put requirements on that block that the developer has to do these particular uses. So the benefit of what we've done is it's a good way for us to get some blocks serviced essentially. So they get all the sewer and the water and the stormwater prepared and that sort of thing.
One of the things that occurred during the development of the swimming pool is that quite a number of commercial outlets were allowed as part of that development to make it a commercially viable concern. Is that the sort of, when you talk about commercial viability, is that the sort of thing you're trying to look for with these sites?
So this is the commercial needs assessment.
Yeah.
We're trying to understand what additional commercial activity would be demanded in this centre. So is there a need for additional supermarket floor space? Is there a need for more commercial office space, employment space? That's what we're trying to establish with this study.
Okay.
Well, thank you for having us tonight. You have one more question?
One more from Kevin.
I'll just make a point about the commercial viability. The commercial viability, of course, depends upon the price of land. And if you, and particularly for community type organisations, they don't have much money. So a lot of community things become viable if the land doesn't cost too much. So maybe you might like to consider that too.
That's a very good point. And that's a really good point. And another aspect too is we're looking at it, could it be a mixed-use development which includes the community facilities, but it might also have commercial involved with it to try and make it a more viable use, because you make an excellent point there.
Okay.
Thank you, Peter.
All right, thank you very much, Helena.
Thank you, everyone.
We look forward to the next phase.
All right. And can I get my USB?
Yes.
They're short.
Which one was it? That one, I think. Oopsie. All right. Peter, you all ready to rock and roll?
Thank you.
Great. Pencil stick. If you could clip that on, that'd be good. And speaking of that, so you've got room and virtual mic as well. Oh. actually got on, so I'll just give it over. So that was advancing slides.
Yep. It's all right. Well, I've lost them now, Peter.
No. Oh, we'll get a chance to talk amongst themselves and if anything happened on the way to the
It's my first visit to this club. I came around the wrong way. The entrance is obviously that way somewhere.
yeah.
I came off the rail and...
All right, look, we might get underway. Peter Steele is from Transport Canberra and has been asked by the GCC on behalf of the community to give us a bit of an update on how the rollout of the new bus network and transport infrastructure has gone in Gungahlin the last few months. Certainly there's been an amount of media coverage about challenges in the new bus network and a number of items of feedback we've passed on to Peter from our Facebook page. Peter's here to give us a bit of an overview of what it looks like from his side, respond to some of those concerns, and then obviously give everyone a chance to ask questions. So over to you, Pete.
No worries. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, everybody, for having us tonight. So as Peter says, I'm here to talk about the new public transport network and how things are moving along, what we're seeing and what we're looking at doing next. Just to update some of the real important parts of where the network changed in Gungahlin and why. Obviously the introduction of the light rail service, which I hope everyone is using, is enjoying, was a big part of that. Getting bus routes out to the new suburbs of Taylor, out to Throsby was really important as well. Making good connections with the rail and the bus through the new infrastructure that we've got, the new Gungahlin bus station or in Gungahlin Place, and making sure people can make that connected journey across the city. Just to give you some high-level stats about how the network's going, ridership overall is up by about 2,700 journeys per day, which is about 5.4% since the network commenced in April. I'm excluding the free travel period. There was a free travel period. We're not counting that because it drew a lot of people, particularly in rail. A lot of excitement getting on the rail early. So now we're starting to see trends normalise, understand how people are actually using the network. And this gives us an opportunity now to really start to dive in and see where we've made good changes, where we maybe not made such good changes, and then what we can do to remedy those. In the Gungahlin district itself, weekday ridership and journeys is up on an average about 10%. So really good to see. That's about 2,400 journeys per day. Really good to see as well on weekends. Ridership is up about 80%. So that's about 1,000 additional journeys made on public transport from the Gungahlin district on weekends. Just to let everybody see a little bit of insight. So we are starting to look a lot more at the light rail itself and how things are travelling. What you're seeing here is only the activity from the light rail stop at the Gungahlin terminus down the road here. As you can see, there's a really concentrated peak during the morning around 8 o'clock. As we kind of predicted, a lot of school students, particularly going to the inner north, are choosing not to catch our school buses but use the light rail itself instead. So if you do go down to Dixon, you'll see a lot of students coming off the light rail. And even though we have some buses running down to those schools, there's not as many kids on them as we thought because they're all voting with their feet and moving to light rail. As you can see as well, the afternoon peak is a bit more extended. We see this generally anywhere across our network. A lot of people in Canberra travel at the same time, so kids going to school, people going to work. But then in the afternoon, this little jag you can see here, that's the school kids coming home, and then the bigger peak in the afternoon is where we start to see people come home and get off at the light rail station here in Gungahlin. This is an interesting one as well. I think that heading's a bit wrong, but this is basically the length of the line, all 13 stops, and the average use that we see along it. If you start from my left, that's Gungahlin Place coming all the way through to the city. Gungahlin Place, by far and away of the stops up in the north, is the busiest. A lot of people turning up here. Interestingly enough, one of the things we are looking at is how people are making their way to light rail. We're seeing about 50% of people are connecting from a bus, but a lot of people are only, the first time we're seeing them in the system is at the Gungahlin station. What that tells us is that they're either using a combination of park and ride, being dropped off, it's locals that are walking up to it. We have got customer service assistants, so as well as the lovely CSOs that you meet on the rail in the red jackets, we do have customer service assistants at our major stations, and they're also doing a bit of reconnaissance for us on the ground so we can start to understand how people are reacting and changing and moving, and that can help our planning moving forward. The next busiest stop, interestingly enough, is Nullarbor Avenue in Gungahlin. It is getting quite busy there. You can see, though, that between Wells Station and Swindon Street, the ridership's still relatively low until we come to Dixon. Dixon, of course, we've got buses connecting there from the inner north, some from Belconnen as well. And as I said before, a lot of school students are getting off there. If you're there right during peak time, Lyneham High, Darramarlin, a lot of movement. What you can also see very early on is MacArthur Avenue, Ipima and Allura, or Ipima, people say it different ways, is there's not a lot of ridership there yet. And I think that really comes down to that northbound corridor still developing, all those buildings that are starting to come in here. I would anticipate that as that builds, we'll start to see a lot more movement through that area. And Allinga Street goes without saying, that's where everybody's going at the moment, until they want to travel to City West or over to Commonwealth Park in the future. What have I said? So what have we heard? Peter did send through quite a good collection of feedback from the Gungahlin Community Facebook page. I thank him for that. We're also collecting a lot of data from our customer experience area. I think some of these are the really strong themes that we're hearing through the feedback. It's really good that we're continuing these conversations, coming to the community councils, still engaging with the community to talk about the network, because it does have to live and breathe. We need to see how it works. We need to see how it works for people, how it doesn't for others, what we need to do next. The really key things that we're hearing out of Gungahlin at the moment is about the peak capacity on rail during the mornings. Very welcome thing to have, full light rail vehicles, but we do have to manage that. So we will talk more with CMET about how we go to remedy that, with the government about increasing that, the service capacity on the rail. Under the contract and in the out years, it's running 6 minutes at the moment. It can get as high as 3 minutes. So there is capacity to extend that along the way. Travel from West and South Gungahlin to Belconnen. That's probably the biggest thing I'm hearing out of Gungahlin. It is a big change, I understand. We're continuing to dive into the data and look at it. The feedback is certainly being heard, and we're looking at what we can do about that. What I really understand that to be is basically having to come forward to go backwards. It's a really unintuitive way for people to travel. It's lengthening travel times, which is completely against what we're trying to do. And also I think that if it's something that we're finding is actually drawing people away from public transport, then again, it's certainly not hitting the mark and something that we want to discuss further and going to the future. Access to Mitchell has been another one as well. We're working closely with the, what are they called? The Mitchell Traders Association as well, about how people can come and move through Mitchell. There's actually a bid in from, not a bid, there's actually been a funding commitment from the ACT government to build a footpath between the current Epic stop back up to Mitchell. We're also looking at the future light rail stop in Mitchell and how that will affect with infrastructure around it. If people are getting off at the new Mitchell stop, they want to be able to walk into Mitchell and get around. If you've been to Mitchell lately, it's not abundant with footpaths and lighting. So there's going to have to be some additional works going on in there. On part of that, we've also changed the local bus that's been there since it first went into service. It now provides a connection at the Epic stop. Coming here in the light rail just then, I noticed that the signage doesn't reflect that, so we'll make sure that gets updated. But now you can get a connection back through to Mitchell, both from the Epic stop or from the Wells Station stop. So it's giving a little bit more certainty about how you can get in and out of Mitchell. But as I said, we are looking at it wholly. One of the feedback from the Mitchell Traders Association is actually sending the bus up Brook Street. through the middle is intuitively as a planner, if you looked at a map, that's where you want to go. It's kind of in the middle. But what we're getting more from the community is that there's really nothing that they want to go to along there, and the bus stops and the infrastructure are quite poor. So one of those things we might do is look at how we can move the bus back along to, I want to say, Hoskin Street. Got to be something like that. And then improve the infrastructure on there so there's better quality of movement of walking in and out. So that's the kind of stuff we're hearing from the community. There's still infrastructure improvements to be made, and we'll be continuing to roll those out. My good friends at the Grove in Ngunnawal are very passionate about their bus that they've now got, but now they are very passionate about having a shelter there. So we've actually done some design on that, and we're looking to put some shelters outside the Grove in Ngunnawal and John Paul College as well. There's also the Casey shops. There's room for a shelter, but there isn't a shelter there right now. So we want to get pretty quickly into that, put a shelter out at the Casey shops and help improve that infrastructure. So we are getting feedback about infrastructure, which is very welcome. I'll just touch directly on a few points that that Peter provided me with. And I'll get my notes. There we are. So as I said, one of the biggest things that came through in the notes Peter sent us, but it's also one that we've been hearing, is about that connection through to Belconnen from the suburbs of Crace, Nichols, even Casey as well. I know that used to be a connection. Someone asked about whether or not we can have all stops trams, basically in express trams. I think just to touch on it again, you can't do that. There's nowhere for the rail to go past each other. They've got to run the way they run. Speaking about connections, connections is certainly something when you build a network like this, the connections and the run times. When we built the network, there was still a lot of work going out in Gungahlin in the roads, and when we design the network with the drivers, we try and make sure we cater for that as much as possible. What we're seeing is, as the roadwork's driving up, the buses are moving through a bit easier. So what we go to then is we go and look at the key connections, we go and redesign the timetable, we improve those connections. Question about buses in the town centre itself and where they lay over. There is a need for a longer term layover plan in the Gungahlin town centre. You might be aware there's a layover space where buses park and they go to the meal and the toilet. Down on Valley Avenue, there's also one at the top of Anthony Rolfe. They're both temporary structures. As the development continues around here and the block of lands go for sale down near the Valley Avenue, we'll need to get the buses out of there. So there's a bit of work still to be done about where the buses can park and where we can move them around. And Mitchell was the other one, but I covered that. And capacity on rail, which we covered as well. So that's all I've got to say, but I'm happy to take any questions and talk about anything else that's available.
Milton Fox. So I used to be able to get a bus out of Ngunnawal to go to Belco.
Yep.
Can't do it anymore. The bus that does go through Ngunnawal, if I want to get a bus from Ngunnawal to Belconnen, I've got to be in Belconnen by about 8. I've got to leave home about 6:30.
Yep.
Like.
No, I understand, and as I said, that's something we're hearing.
And so my son, who is 17, goes to school down the back of Dixon. Can't think of it at the moment. Refuses to get the public transport, right? Because in his eyes, he's got to get in his car anyway. Right, because to get to the bus, it takes him about an hour to get from Gungahlin to from Ngunnawal to Gungahlin. As far as I can see, connection-wise, is just abysmal, just terrible.
Can you elaborate on that? What do you?
Well, those examples, right?
Is it the connection timing, having to make connections? What was the
travel time that it takes to get, in our case, out of Gungahlin?
Yep.
And I understand why everything goes into Gungahlin. So to get out of Ngunnawal into Gungahlin, the bus goes from Ngunnawal up to out the back, and I think it goes through out through the new suburbs now. All right, out through Bonner and whatever, and
So you're catching a 27 or a 28?
yeah, and it's so long to get to there. The time it takes to get to there,
Back to here. And then you want to go to Belco.
and then I want to go to Velco. Right, or my son wants to go into Dixon. Right, the time from the time from Gungahlin to anywhere you want to go is fabulous. The time to get from any suburb to Gungahlin is dreadful.
So, Milton, so just to be clear on that, it's really about there's a few issues there, but the one you seem to really be picking out is it's the travel times from suburbs to the hub to then move forward.
Correct.
Yep. Great.
Right?
Yep.
Absolutely shut up.
Yep. Thanks.
No, we'll go to the next question.
I'm here all night.
I just want to know, along Claire Hermes Drive, you only got the one bus stop in front of the retirement village. Are you going to put any more bus stops along Claire Hermes Drive? Yeah, it turns into Gungahlin Drive as well.
Sorry, you're just going to have to remind me where you're talking about.
So Clary Hermes is this guy out here. Where are we? I've lost it. Clary Hermes.
Ah, right. So along that part of Gungahlin Drive. Yep. Sorry. Oh, I don't have a mic. Yeah, I don't know it as Claire Hermes Drive. Is that what the locals call the whole thing?
That's what it's called.
It says Gungahlin Drive on that map. So
It stops being Gungahlin Drive here and goes Horsebuck and Clary Hermes.
right. Okay. So yeah, look, it's a service corridor. We've got 2 buses going down there. Well, actually 3 if you count the bi-directional loop running on the Taylor. So look, where there's opportunities, absolutely, we'd like to look at it. Where there's demand for it and we're hearing about it, there's other areas in the city where we do have routes going past, and we've had feedback from the community about if we had a bus stop, we could actually access this. So it's certainly something we'd be interested in looking at, and if anyone's got any specific...
Nursing or the retirement village.
Yeah.
Just the one stop along that whole gap to Gungahlin Drive.
Yeah.
No other ones. There's a big gap between.
Yeah, so...
So there's dots here.
Yep.
And the next dot's here or here. So there's nothing in between here and that's the point. Okay.
Yeah, so generally, I think, to my point earlier, there were bus stops there that were only for school buses before, so that was the only reason a bus went along there. As we've redesigned the network, we're trying to make a more decent kind of connection back to Casey, and especially that 25 that comes in is supposed to be a quick trip into the town centre from the Casey Group Centre. So you need to trade off between, if we build a bus stop, how much will it slow the bus down and what's it trying to do versus what's the demand like. If it's we can do the work, and if it's a gold mine and everyone around it's going to use it, then absolutely we like doing that. But we do trade off against, well, do we slow the bus down? What's the infrastructure cost like? So there's a few questions to ask, but they're always good to hear if there's opportunities like that.
Just got a point on active travel. I understand you've got an active travel section still within Transport Canberra.
Yeah.
Haven't heard much about active travel comments surrounding the new light rail and any of the new bus networks. And unfortunately, pedal power is a bit more southern focused rather than up to the north. But there's one bicycle cage along Flemington Road in the middle of Harrison there somewhere.
Yep.
But as you've shown on your statistics, there's a huge spike for people catching light rail from Gungahlin. And you made a comment about people catching buses or driving and doing park and ride.
Yeah.
However, especially in the summer months, and there's some pretty hard calls in winter as well, that if you had a bicycle cage or a facility where people could actually ride, park their bikes, very similar to the cage that's out the back of the ACT government building, just up down the road.
Yep.
Next door.
Yep.
That might actually contribute to active travel, people riding, people who do walk from the local suburbs, I do that. Probably don't need one in the city because that's actually the destination, and then people catch buses and go to work. but I would think that a bike cage at the Gungahlin terminus end would be a pretty good idea.
So while Pete's making a note of that, I'm actually a member of Pedal Power and was going to have a meeting with Deepak Rajgupta, the new MLA, to talk about cycle infrastructure, but it fell through on Thursday. So I know that's happening, and it was just a chance meeting with Jeff Epertson from Pedal Power. I'm doing something in Gungahlin, so there is a bit of work going on from a Pedal Power point in that space. But one of the things he asked me, what are the priorities? And I said, better cycling infrastructure in and out of the town centre and somewhere to put your bike. So we're on that. So what are you doing?
Not working in the active travel area, but I'm going to have a go.
Just on that.
So one of the really popular things we're seeing, and just outside our work in Dixon, is when all of the stops along the rail, part of the finishing work there was putting in the bike rails. We're starting to see them fill up. I think the one at Watson, before they could get in there and do the rails, all of the trees were covered with bikes. So luckily people have migrated to the bike racks now that they're in. My colleagues, not to speak out of turn for them, but I'm pretty sure they've just completed a bit of a study about bike and ride activity and where these type of shelters should be. So we're looking at park and ride expansions and things like that. Bike and ride, bike facilities is also part of that conversation. So there's a lot of work going on in that space. I can't speak too much to it, but it's definitely still in the Active Travel Office. One of the specific things I've spoken to someone recently about is about bike infrastructure in the place here, decent, undercover, where you can lock your bike up. So those conversations are going through. I can't tell you about any programs that are actually going through, but I've certainly talked about it with colleagues.
Now, look, that'd be good. I mean, in peak and rush hour, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
you can't get your bike on the tram anyway because too many people. So I guess it's better to have bikes parked and locked up.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, very soon, if you allow electric scooters in, the tram will be full of electric scooters.
Ooh, I'm not touching that one. I will say though, but the bike infrastructure, what we know is you can only fit 4 bikes on a LRV. You can only fit 2 on a bus, the ones that do have bike racks. So whilst they're really good and they're handy, they don't solve the issue when you have 50 people cycling to public transport. So we definitely need to look at that. Absolutely.
My question's about the park and ride facility just down the road here. Twice in the last 2 weeks, I've had to turn around and go home and catch the bus back in on Monday. I didn't get to work till 10 o'clock. I got there at 8:40 on Monday, and 2 weeks ago I got there at 8:20, and it was completely full. What I wanted to suggest is, down there's about 3 rows of dedicated park and ride, and the rest, I think, is 6 rows. I'm going to rough count tonight when I drive home.
Yep.
Of undesignated, unrestricted parking. Where in the short term you can perhaps look at, I don't know what the governance is of that area, but whether you can increase some of the, another lane or row of park and ride. But and further along, are you looking at a request, and you look at increasing the park and ride capacity, because coming from Ngunnawal, well, the bus isn't too bad to get to the marketplace. It does slow you up to get you've got to, the buses come in 20 or 30 minute increments.
Yep.
And it's a lot less attractive.
Yep.
And that's why on Monday, getting to work at 10 o'clock, I was lucky I had time flexibility, but next week there's a few days where I have to be at work right on time. I'm not real confident that I can use it, and it's a shame. And another thing I was going to suggest on that is, I was talking to Transport Canberra about earlier in the week, you're issuing massive number of tickets for park and ride. Perhaps you should look at restrictions of, I would have thought a fair restriction is if you're catching the tram or the bus 3 days a week or more. But certainly, I don't know if other people use the park and ride, but it's getting very, very full, and there is nowhere else in Gungahlin now. There used to be able to park anywhere a few years ago, and it was a lot younger. There's nowhere else you can legally park, and it's cheaper to go and pay $20 in the city than to pay $140 fine, basically.
Yep.
But I don't want to pay parking every day to have to drive in, because if I have to be at work, I'll have to keep driving and pay $20 to park. And I won't be catching the tram because I've got a car to park legally somewhere. Do I need to?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of park and ride conversations, both in the consultation for the network and ongoing. We've got some sites down south that are absolutely chock-a-block. So we're definitely looking at the park and ride. One of the issues about park and ride in a town centre such as this one is if you induce car demand to come into the town centre, it can make it harder for buses to get in here as well, so people who are on the buses. So there's a bit of a dynamic that you need to manage there. The Wells Station Park and Ride is kicking off shortly, I believe, or there's design for it. So no, at Wells Station, which is right there.
When will that be open?
I can't provide comment on that.
That's a good fallback.
Yes.
Because I don't want to have to do what I did the other day, getting work. That's a disaster for.
Yeah, look, and I'm sure part of that is as I walked here from the rail stop, I know that the cinema side is all blocked off now, so I'm sure that was a lot of informal park and ride early. So this town centre is changing, as Peter would know, rapidly.
Right now, we have plenty of space for surface, just put some gravel down, surface car park. We have plenty of space right now. So I can't believe that can't be solved. So that's okay. But clearly, are you guys...
It's not sustainable, though.
Are you guys aware that the park and ride is filling?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've got a plan to fix that?
I think we should make sure we have a plan to fix that, Peter. It's not sustainable to have park and rides in the town centre, though. I'm not going to get out of here without mentioning that.
No, fair call, but it's all about those connections, all right? And
it's about balances. It's an integrated journey. We want people to travel in many different ways. Park and ride, surprisingly to me, the elderly, they love using the park and ride and not driving to the city at all, which I didn't pick until I started talking to people about it.
I don't want everyone piling in. If the buses are coming into the middle of the town centre, that's what their interchange is.
Yep.
If you brought the park and riders just one block out, they've only got to walk one block. They're already active travellers, so you're guaranteed they'll walk one block.
Yep.
They're my calls. Anyway, I'm just here with microphone.
Yes. I'm one of the people who happily uses the buses and the light rail more on the weekends now, but I'm concerned that when they bring in the new weekend suburban bus timetable, that I won't be able to get a connection from Gungahlin back out to where I live, without an extended wait, which would really turn me off using it on the weekend.
Yes, it is unfortunate that there are some reliability issues with the weekends, and there's an action plan coming out about how we're going to resolve that. Is there a specific route that you're catching?
25 and 26 are right for me, so it takes...
Wow, the long and winding roads.
Oh.
No, they're the nice direct ones to Casey from Gungahlin.
Oh, okay, so yeah.
In and out. So with the bi-directional loops, when you reduce the frequency, you can still kind of go either way. So there's a little bit of built-in. It's not ideal to have to reduce service, but the key thing of any public transport network is reliability. So the plan that's being put together about the timetable is build a base reliable and then build on that to increase the reliability as we have confidence that the services will run.
I'm not sure reliability is the key. I know it would turn me off if I had to wait an hour for a connection.
But I think if you wait for a bus every half hour and one doesn't turn up for 4, so it's an unfortunate balance to have to strike, is a reliable bus every hour or an unreliable bus that might come every 2 hours. I agree, it's unfortunate, but we need to make sure we tackle it in a pragmatic manner. And there's a few different ways that we're going after that will come out. But certainly the intention is to put a base in, build it forward, grow it back up, and give confidence back to people who are using it. Because absolutely, the whole part of a 7-day network is getting people on the weekends, making people use transport all the time, and that's what we want to continue to make sure people can do.
I've got 2 questions.
Yes.
One adding to more Ngunnawal problem. I catch bus and tram or light rail from Ngunnawal to city.
Yep.
From Ngunnawal to city is fine. I can check the app, find the bus, go. But on the way back, my availability from Gungahlin to Ngunnawal is not that good. I can take either 27 or 28, but sometimes I have to wait for more than an hour to get any one of them.
When's that?
That's very often actually. Even last week. Yeah, last week I think.
Sorry, on a weekday?
Yeah, it's a weekday. It's not a weekend. It's a weekday. Weekday evening, 6:30, 7 o'clock.
Yeah, I might have a chat to you about that, and we'll see where that is. That's
the second question.
That shouldn't happen.
Is on the light rail. Is there any reason we don't have a hand holding the yellow thingy? Because I'm 5'8", and I struggle to hold the higher bar. And that's the reason people get stuck in the entrances where they can hold the vertical beams. And there's no one moving inside because they can't reach the upper rail.
Yeah, so there's certainly a commitment to look at how handrails can be added to the LRVs. There's a bit of work going on how you do that. The LRV is actually designed, the whole LRV is designed so people can move through it. For example, I would take a handrail in the face. So we need to make sure that when you're putting them in, they're in the right positions where people can use them. They make it so people will move through the vehicle the right way. You watch people use the LRVs, a lot of them pile on the skinny door at the end. You move up the platform and use the big doors, but that's some behavioural change that we might start to see as people start to use it a bit more and can't get on. But there is a commitment to put handrails in the LRV. I can't give you any timing on it, but we can get some information back to you on it.
Yeah, thank you. Just on the park and ride, I mean, as the town centre develops south, you're always going to lose that sort of surface parking, which I think of as park and ride, even though formally it's not.
Yep.
It was really noticeable how much utilisation had increased after the light rail opened.
Yep.
There's sort of 3 car parks abroad that were, one was always pretty full, and the other 2 weren't that busy, and then they were all pretty full.
Yep.
Now one's gone.
Yep.
So when I was using that today, there were a few parks left, so it was okay. As long as we didn't walk them on or something. But your point about you want to avoid car traffic coming into the town centre. With the completion of light rail construction, is there scope down near Manning Clark North?
Oh, look, potentially, it is like kind of Peter's point. There might be opportunities for temporary ones as they move forward.
As the town centre grows,
yep.
There will be less and less free surface parking, and I think everyone accepts it at the time. But and maybe it's a transitional thing which they will start pointing out like next to us.
Yep.
But I think you have got some scope now to offset the loss at the similar site, potentially down at Manning Clark North, that may think of the environmental characteristics of the zoning or ownership of the site. But it was what was used for light rail construction, and so it's a bit of a panic thing. Just one other thing, you made the point before, you can't do express running. You can. Western Side's been doing express running on single track, heavy rail for decades.
Mm.
2 trams leave Gungahlin, one runs express to Dixon and then all stops to the city. Second one runs all stops to Dixon and then express to the city. They both turn up roughly at the same time. It's a shorter trip. 3-way headway might be better though, but I'll leave that to experts.
Yeah, that's my general answer to that question. I don't want to get into detailed scheduling.
You can do express running.
Yeah, priority is frequency and reliability first. I think if things get pushed certain ways, there's exciting scheduling tricks we can pull out of the top drawer, but generally.
But you do need more capacity, I'll leave it
On what, sorry?
You do need more capacity.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Good problem to have. Oh.
Yeah, 2 quick questions on behalf of a user, not me. First of all, you mentioned the peak period when you're talking about capacity. You mentioned frequency of service. Is it possible to make the LRVs bigger? Like it's only going to get worse, and you can put more services on it if you extend the vehicle. You get more capacity. Is that a possibility?
I'm not the expert on the CAF urbos, is what they're called. I really am a bus guy mostly, but it's really built for capacity through frequency first, and then I think there's options maybe down the track for either longer trams. Whether they can be coupled like they've done in Sydney, I'm not sure. Certainly the infrastructure won't take it at the moment. The stops are only big enough for a single tram at a time.
Yes, I did notice the light rail around Sydney a couple of weekends ago. They seem to be a lot longer. So,
they've actually joined them together in Sydney. Yeah.
Look, the second question is what I understand is you tap off.
Yep.
Now, from what I'm hearing is that's a choke point. And I know that in London, for example, you never tap off a bus. Now I understand why. They say don't do it, you just tap on and then everyone gets off. Is there any way that can be dealt with as well? Like, is it necessary to tap off?
So a great debate around the world from planners and operations people is whether people tap on or not. Tap off, sorry. The data is incredibly valuable at the back end. Places like London where it's pretty compressed, you can kind of work the data backwards and get yourself a matrix of movements a bit easier. Somewhere like Canberra where it's more dispersed, it's very helpful for us to know where people are getting on and off. I know myself when you get off the LRV in peak, it's a bit of a crush. People are still kind of figuring out how they let people on, how people get off. The availability of the readers themselves, whether there's enough of them, I think that's something people are kind of talking about, how they're positioned. I think there's an opportunity also when you put in a new piece of infrastructure like the light rail, you can design it, but then when you actually watch how people use it and move through, that's where you can get the real insights for where you can make improvements. So if people start kind of going that way, or if Canberrans find that that's how they move through, we might find a better opportunity to install those in the future. So whether it was an oversight not to have enough at the start, we've tried to pack them in at the major stops. I'd be for putting more in, but making sure they're in the right place so people have a better flow of movement through. But as coming from the planning side, I love tap-off data and I wouldn't want to get rid of it.
So what you're saying is there's a conflict between passenger facilitation and data collection, and you're going to allow it? There's a balance. So dwell times might increase if you have to tap off. In a place like London, a bus can't be sitting in the road as long as it might be able to hear. There's all sorts of changes and I'll be lobbied, I know, by others to suggest perhaps the data might be able to be collected some other way so people can just get the hell off the bus.
We should just get rid of the ticketing system then. Oh, stop it. No, okay.
A modest increase in rates will cover the cost of running transport camp.
It's only about $26 million a year through the fare box.
And I think there's a couple over this side. So.
Just with so many people getting on and off into Lincoln Street, I think further consideration needs to be made there, both in terms of the number of tap-on, tap-off devices, but also particularly those pedestrian crossings right next to the stop. You're seeing a huge number of people just jaywalking, trying to run across the road just to be able to get to the LRV in time before it departs.
Yep.
So we need to start to look at that, just the timing for the the pedestrian links there.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, very, very well understood and continually being monitored. We have made changes to the bus interchange in the city, and that is to help prioritise the priority connections. One of them actually is the out of Gungahlin to your right and to the bus to Woden. But as the intersection design works at the moment, you need to wait a second phase of lights to cross that road. So that's something that we're certainly talking about with our colleagues in roads about how that intersection can work better for pedestrians to give them a better connection through there. So yeah, I am aware of it, and I know there's been a bit of talk about jaywalking and all of that, but the town centre really needs to help people move around on the transport network. So we'll keep looking into that one as well.
Thanks, buddy, for coming tonight. How many people can sit in the bus, which is like a train kind of bus, like a connected bus?
A bendy bus?
Yeah.
Bendy buses are about 65 seats, 101 capacity.
Okay, with the light rail, how many people can be seated?
64, I'm going to say.
64 people can be seated?
I think so.
Okay. So with the light rail, is there any, you can put more seats on it? Because I can see some rooms where, there are a lot of empty rooms, which probably if we use it wisely, we might accommodate more seats and stuff. Because what I see, it's always full. We never had that problem when the bus was running in the Flemington Road. There was plenty of 250s going around. So I'm not sure whether have you guys thought about increasing the seats? Because the Sydney one, I think they have more seats than the Canberra one. So do you guys consider that at all?
Look, I can't really speak for too much. I'll kind of give my thoughts on it. You don't really want to go and retrofit seats. The design of the LRV is quite purposeful to make sure that people can fit on it. As I said before, the handles have been designed in a way that are supposed to help people move. Maybe that's not working as well. We'll go and look at the handles on it. I know on the Gold Coast, they get more seats in, but it's not a completely low floor environment. So you've got people tripping over the steps. So there's sacrifices and there's trade-offs when you're designing the vehicles. We do the same thing with the buses. To have bigger doors, we lose 2 seats. Do we want seats? Do we want more space for standing? What's the purpose of the vehicle? For the LRV, as I was showing before on this slide, whilst a lot of the trips are full length now, there'll still be full length trips, and this is where running a bit of an express bus or rail will come in handy, but we'll get more cycle of movement along the corridor as it grows. So you should get more people getting on and off instead of just getting on, running the whole length of it. That'll always exist, but you'll start to get more movement, at which point you want more open space in the vehicle. And of course, it's also, you've got the disability access and the cycling access. If you do catch the LRVs, you'll notice that one of the most popular passengers are people with prams as well. So that DDA compliance, not having the steps in the vehicle, gives people a lot of confidence to be able to get on and off it. The trade-off is not as many seats, but that's part of running it.
And another thing about the transport, which we usually ask in the Gungahlin Community Council, and then the transport people say, we'll come back and get you the information, and they never come back. Which is, when we jack up and get the bus, and there are also promised trail versions of bus from Gungahlin to Tuggeranong. They want to trial some to see how that's going to work, which never happened, or we never got any updates on those two things. Do you have any update now, or you're going to get back as well?
No, I can tell you that a bus will never get into Jacker. That road that goes through it, a bus literally can't drive through there. So there'll never be a bus in Jacker. There are bus stops. I've said that before. That's why I have confidence in saying it again. Go and look at the curbs through that little street that runs through the middle of Jacker. They're like that high. A bus literally can't drive through that road. There are bus stops that are now completed out on Horse Park Drive that reduces the walking distance for people of Jacker from way up in, if I have a look at the map, where's Jacker again? Yep, there. So they used to have to go up right back up to Bonner to get on the bus, whereas there's actually a set of bus stops that's been decided on Horse Park Drive as part of the duplication, and that provides better access to public transport for the people of Jacker. Sorry, what was your second question?
The trail bus from Gungahlin to Tuggeranong.
I think that was to be considered as previous to the network design. It hasn't made it into the end of the network design. I've got no plans to continue to pursue that.
Does the My Way data show anyone trying to catch public transport from the Gungahlin to Tuggers?
Yeah, it does. It's pretty limited, but it's sporadic as well. One of the challenges, if it's like, oh, put our bus on from Gungahlin to Tuggeranong. Okay, first question, when do you want to travel? Well, I want to travel at 7, I want to travel at 9. Okay, so we need 2 buses. And once you start to having that conversation, we can't run 10 different buses for 10 individuals to get to Tuggeranong. So there's a whole lot of work you need to do in that space. Because of the travel time savings for rail, when you actually add it up, if you run a bus from here, down the Gungahlin Drive, down the Tuggeranong Parkway during the morning, the travel time is almost equivalent to taking the light rail, connecting to the bus. It's only a matter of minutes difference nowadays because of the priority that the rail gets. So when we look at where we're going to put our resources, we need 6 buses to try and accommodate everyone who might want to make that trip, or there's capacity on the network to let them do that already?
I've done that trip from Casey to Tuggeranong. It only took an hour and 15 minutes. So it was pretty good.
It's all right.
Microphone?
The My Way card
yep.
Offers a great opportunity for you, as you recognise. Would you consider, if I, say for example, if I, not necessarily me, but someone set up a bus service that would, with small buses,
yep.
that would go around some of these routes, and would we be able to use or come to a negotiated agreement with you guys to actually use the My Way card as a way of being able to and connect into the whole system as a way of being able to collect fares? It seems to me that there's a big opportunity here for people to be able to pick up people. It could even be taxis at the moment.
Right. So, yeah.
To use the My Way card and get their fares that way.
Yeah. So I think asking about payment systems and how they work, I thought you were asking me whether or not you could be an accredited bus operator and run your own routes. Is that what you're asking? Yes. Oh, well, that's a different story, which we can't really go into. In terms of payment mechanisms, everyone might be aware the ACT government's investing in a next generation ticketing system. More info will be coming out about how all that's going to work, but what that basically allows us to do, the My Way cards, they are old, they're probably 20-year technology, so we do want to move on from them. Where we want to get to cloud-based credit card payments, app-based payments. If you want to tie transport together, it's a lot easier to do that. You can connect an Uber. There's places in the US at the moment where Uber and the transit agencies are working together on a single app. You can plan your trip. You can pay for both legs of it. and it counts as a payment. It deducts it from your account, the Uber account, your public transport price. So that's the future of transport. That's mobility as a service. That's where we are definitely moving. The My Way card, the investment required to change that system, to do it very soon. The real pathway is to get the ticketing system upgraded as we're proposing to do, and that opens you to this world of opportunities of how you can have connected payment mechanisms. So that might include bike hire, the electric scooters, I think someone mentioned before. You could pay for it all through the single gateway, plan your trip, have the Uber waiting at the end, get right into it, off you go. So that's definitely the future of transport and payments.
Would that interact with interstate, like the Open system, or what's the Melbourne, MyTick or whatever it is?
Mikey?
Mikey, yeah.
It'll be the best opportunity to do that, is to have a cloud payment system. Yeah, one of the big challenges is recognising state-based concessions, so that'll help you tie that up kind of in the cloud. I keep doing this. It's not literally like that. But basically, in the back end, the system has the smarts to do that. So the Mikey brand might just be the brand in Melbourne, but essentially it's a travel pass where they all connect together.
I've got a question. Electric buses, what happened to those?
Electric buses, we ran a trial. We're continuing to look at that and how they move through. They're rapidly changing the zero emissions vehicle technology, ZEVs, people keep telling me lately. We need to look at the operational requirements that we need versus what's in the market, balance that out, get to a conclusion, move forward. I know the government's got a very sharp zero emissions strategy. Great, we'll fall into that, and you'll see us meet the zero emissions target by the government. But we do need. It's very careful investment. If you're talking about a fleet of 400, 500 buses. We don't want to go out and buy something that's going to last a year and then find we're in a bad spot. So it's a big investment for us to make, so we need to make sure we do the right things before we do it.
Yep. May I just go back to the histogram, the slide before that one, please? I just wanted to know the other one, that's a polygon. See the Manning Park North stop, which is the first one after Gungahlin Place.
Yep.
Right around there is I think, zoned for mixed development. That would be an ideal spot to put in park and ride, or more spots for people to park. We've already seen what happened out here in front of the club, where all the parks, all the cars have gone opposite the other side. And to me, if you look down the track a little bit, 10 years down the road, there's going to be an enormous strain on the Gungahlin area to fit people in from this end.
Yeah.
And this is an ideal spot where park and ride, or you could make a heaps of area for cars and bikes for people to alleviate the Gungahlin Place spot. So.
I think I'm not super up to speed on the land use requirements for that area at the moment, but I'll take all these comments back.
All right, I'm just conscious we're a little bit over time. One quick one?
Yeah. So I get the R8 to and from Belco.
Yep.
Enormously late coming home. You can better it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You can be late anywhere between 5 and 20 minutes. Take your pick.
Yep.
I've never seen it on time.
All right, I'm going to close that. Thank you, Peter, for taking so many questions.
No worries.
Just, I guess, to reiterate, the Belco access is clearly the big hairy chestnut that most people are struggling with.
Yep.
Do you have some ideas about how to address that?
There's look, honestly, as I said, it's a living thing. We need to. The beauty of buses, we can change them. They're not in the ground. We do have some challenges coming. The CSIRO site through there, what that will do to that area, how that'll function.
I wouldn't hold my breath waiting for something to happen there. Next.
No. It's just a consideration. But no, look, generally, I think that what we need to do is look at the use, see how it's changed. I know there's benefits that I've heard directly from the community about how this is a more direct trip into the town centre. So we want to see how that works. But look, if the overwhelming feedback is we want to get to Belconnen, and in particular, as I said earlier, if we're forcing people off public transport because we're not giving them what they want, then I think we need to have a good hard look at it. And as we go through and review the network, because we'll continue to review it, we're doing it right now, we'll continue to review it. That's something that I think, if I came back here again, it'd be something that the number one thing we'd be looking at for this part of town.
Well, I guess that's what we'll come stalking for you on that, because that's the one we get, so that's good.
Yep.
And park and ride.
Yeah, no, park and ride.
All right, well,
You're in
thank
park
you
and
all
ride.
for your contribution. Thank you for coming along.
Thank you.
So I just want to close off the session today. I'll go to you where we'll actually work online. Mark, can you just, on my laptop, go to the Gold Creek Homestead site on Google Maps? Okay. Right, so just want to have a quick update on the... so before I forget, this Saturday, Floriad's coming to Gungahlin. If you've not seen our Facebook post, the Floriad program is being run as a series of pop-ups, as well as the big flower show in the middle of town in a range of suburbs. And the first one is going to be on Saturday, the 14th, out here in Gungahlin from noon until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So come into the town centre, there'll be lots of activities, and Google Floriad in the suburbs. I just want to talk a little bit about the Gold Creek Homestead site. That's not it. It's opposite the John Paul College. No. Good test, excellent test. All over that. Also, an interesting historic building and important in the Gungahlin area. We're surrounded by a number of homesteads, and I've had the opportunity to bump into a few of them recently. Of particular note is the Wells Station property, which was actually going to get sold up, but in 2011 a strong community movement supported the heritage listing of that site, and it's been retained as a working farm. And they've got quite a close relationship with Harrison School. The kids get the chance to see a working farm, and if you're out riding around in Mulligans and Guru, you occasionally bump into some of the cows being adjusted on some of the areas down there. So it's an interesting area. Yep, Gold Creek Homestead. Could you zoom in on that and give us a colour? So Gold Creek Homestead is one of the original homesteads in the Gungahlin region. Portions of the actual building on that site date back to the 1800s. Not all of the buildings on that site date back to the 1800s. And for many, many years it was a wedding function, a place where you could go have a barbecue, something of an event centre through the late 80s and 90s. And it's been sort of left fallow for a long time. And last year, the government Suburban Land Agency attempted to sell the site, and there were some problems with the deed, which essentially didn't seek to retain any of the values of the site, which is a homestead. Where are we? Yep, you'll see there's a homestead building, but all that greenery, it's certainly not that green now after all the lack of rain. It's quite a large site. All the bottom half of it, if you like, from the Gold Creek Homestead logo down, is all quite a nicely manicured park, and it used to be homestead areas. There's an old tennis court and big trees and an old structured garden. The northern end of it is a little less interesting, but the whole site is a green area that could be established and retained. And so last year, when the site was up for sale, the Gungahlin Community Council and ACT Heritage Trust campaigned quite strongly to have the sale paused so that we could have a better go at looking at what the community interest might be. Unfortunately, the SLA did stop that sale, but they've now started the process of selling the site again. But this time around, there's going to be a community engagement process to try and understand what the community might want out of that site and give the community an opportunity to have their say in some way. The Community Council's position is that it's a pretty unique site. We don't have a lot of history retained in Gungahlin. There are a few small examples. Gungadera Homestead is one. I mentioned Wells Station. But of course, Wells Station is not generally open. You can't just wander into Wells Station. and we'd like to see the site activated, because just having it shut up and fenced and is hopeless. You need to have some sort of activity there as a community site or a fancy restaurant or something in that area. My personal experience from stomping around the location is you've got to see it to believe it. So as part of this process, I'd certainly be keen for there to be an open day so people can see the site. And secondly, the landscaping and the gardens are perhaps as impactful as the old building itself. So the Community Council is very engaged with the SLA, some of that team are here today, and we'll be going through them with a process that will involve other stakeholders and members of the Gungahlin community. So if there are any questions about that piece. Now one of the members, a couple of members of the community, Kevin Cox is involved with the Community Council, and Rosemary Buning, have been looking at one way of having community involvement in taking on that site in some way, and they'd like to just say a few words about some of their thinking. So I'll let them talk. That's a little bit different from the Community Council's engagement in the process, but this is a way in which one mechanism that would enable the site to be, if you like, owned by all of us. So, Kevin? So, it'll be Rosemary speaking. You can click that on somewhere, Rosemary? That'd be great.
You click it on.
Okay, well, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, good to go.
Thank you. Does that, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, if you can
Yes, into there.
Oh, broken it. There we go.
Yeah. Well, as Peter said, it's a lot. It's beige rather than green all around there now. And as you would know if you've driven past it on Gungahlin Drive, the Grove is greatly advanced now. It's a thriving community. All of that built up area is built up now, and they have a community centre in the centre of it. I've taken some photographs because apart from going through climbing over fences, there is a gap from Mary Place up on the top of top right of the photograph, and you can get in through Aruna Court, just go along the fence line there. But that's the only way you can actually, legally, I suppose, have a peek through the fence and see what it's like. But as Peter said, the lower part looks fairly settled. There's some of it has been mown. There's quite a few areas where the grass is very long, and goodness knows what that grass is hiding. It's introduced species. It's not necessarily native grasses or anything that's readily mown. It may well. They may even be hiding dumps of something unmentionable. We don't know. And in the bottom left corner, you can see there's a dam there. That was quite a thriving dam in a way. There were quite a few bird species in and around it yesterday when I was there. Yes, so you can see. And the area 23, therefore, that where it's 23 on it, that would be right close to the people in the Grove if anything were built there. And one of the suggestions I would put to you as an idea is to turn it into some sort of community hub, but more sort of basing it on our various heritages. So we might have craft activities there. We might have community gardens, but also the preserving the old-fashioned way of doing things, living sustainably off the land through preserving and making jams, that sort of thing. And this would obviously involve a whole range of could involve different community groups. Would be craft groups, but also be the Country Women's Association, perhaps, or anybody from our very numerous different ethnic and origins do their own cooking skills, their own recipes, and also, of course, could be a nature play area. Children could come there for nature play activities and experiences using the site. The top area, I don't know, as I haven't actually been in there, there's a lot of rocks protruding through the grasses, so it may well be quite interesting geologically, but so whether anything would need to be built on there in order for the government to make its money out of the land, I guess we can only wait and see. But there's certainly the lower half near Gungahlin Drive, is something possible there. as I say, more of a heritage hub, a community, not quite in the same way as a recreation centre or a leisure centre or a sports centre, but something that goes back to the traditional things. You might even have somebody who does metalwork showing how blacksmithing was done. You might have connections with actual Gold Creek Station, which of course is next door to Hall. We might have a few sheep and show where sheep shearing and using wool, how wool translated into knitting and that sort of thing. So it's reviving the old skills that all of our origins, all of our pasts have contributed. So that would be my idea. And of course we could bring in organisations like Sea Change. They may be interested. One area I did investigate was the Canberra Environment Centre, which, if you can visualise it, it's in a few demountable buildings right on the edge of the ANU campus, opposite where the roundabout for the National Museum is, and they've got a fabulous community gardens there where they show you all the different growing techniques, pruning techniques, that sort of thing. So they were interested in sort of cloning themselves, but of course they don't have the resources to do it. So we would have support from them of doing something similar, but how we could actually swing that in a sort of funding and resources, then would just actually have to wait and see. So that's my ideal for it, because of course to try and make it into a really local area, so you don't have to jump on a bus or you don't have to go a long car journey. You can walk in from the various residences around the place and have local nature, local crafts, local industries right on your doorstep. Thank you. That's it. Yeah, I've killed it at that end.
Yeah, that's right. All right, any questions on the Gold Creek site? I mean, Kevin, we can't hear you, so you might have to come out here, microphone yourself up if you want to say a few words. Quickly.
Anyone who might be interested in helping out and trying to make this vision a little bit more real, we've got a little thing here. If you could just put your name down and your email address, and we'll be in contact with you.
So, any questions about Gold Creek site? Process, interest, clever ideas?
I have a suggestion here, a repair shop.
A pear shop.
Like,
Oh.
buying new, repair.
Okay. All right. We'll add that in and with the yeah. Sorry.
Can you tell us a bit more about the actual process? So last time
they
called for tenders. Are they going to call for tenders before, after consultation? What is the timeline?
We've already been approached to be involved in a community consultation process that will inform the tender process. So the idea is that instead of just a tender going out and maybe you choose the bid with the most money, you would choose a bid that had an appropriate amount of money and was respectful of community needs. And the community engagement process would provide a criteria or a framework for assessing the responses against community wishes and needs. We kind of don't know because we haven't seen it yet, but the key thing for us is that we, the GCC, and you, the residents, are going to be given the opportunity to have an input in how that's made. I mean, there are some people from that process here. They can remain silent or they might want to speak. Happy to stay silent for the moment? Okay, right. Petra will say a few words. Petra's a veteran of the Gungahlin scene.
Thank you, Peter. My name is Petra Oswald from the Suburban Land Agency. My team's responsible for setting up a community engagement process to develop what we call a precinct development brief. So, as Peter mentioned, the site is earmarked for sale in the indicative land release program in the first half of 2020. But instead of going out with a blank sheet of paper and only assessing it against financial criteria. We also want to include non-financial criteria into the assessment of the preferred tenderer. And in order to define the right objectives and principles for the site we are seeking, we want to start a community panel process. So actually, within the next week, it's very likely that our package will go out. So we're calling for interested people to nominate themselves to be part of the community panel. We will be working with Peter and the Gungahlin Community Council in terms of putting that information up on their web. It is going to be a process, so there will be a series of community panel meetings throughout October and November. We are currently just going to the market to get a professional engagement expert, an independent one, to assist us with the process. And the overall outcome is really site objectives and principles that will then be attached to the tender that goes out onto the market, and it will also inform the tender evaluation criteria.
Anything else? Yeah.
Look, having been involved in a lot of tendering processes for government, you need to be very careful about going to the marketplace and how you state what your outcome is going to be, not what the process is necessarily are, but what's the outcome you want from this tender process.
As with, I think the approach we're taking is like with any good brief to the market or for any design is that we're really describing the site objectives and some of the uses, and in particular some adaptive reuse opportunities for the homestead, and reflecting that in the tender criteria. So, for example, a good example is what the government has recently undertaken over the last few years is the Canberra Brickworks process. They worked with a community panel as well, and as a result of that, the tender evaluation criteria, price, for example, was only sort of assessed 30%, and the tender evaluation criteria, they were very transparent, but there were other side objectives that they were defined by the community panel, and the tender responded to them. Rather than actually defining exactly what design outcomes we're after, we're working with objectives and principles what need to be achieved. So, for example, if there is a strong desire to have that site continue to have it accessible for the public, then that could be one criteria that needs to be considered, and dependent on how the tenders reflect that criteria, they get assessed against that.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Petra. So yes, more as that unfolds. I just wanted to flag that it's coming, and it's we're quite pleased that there's a bit more of a process around it to enable us to be engaged. There are a few other interesting people in the audience tonight. I know the team from Project Wing are here, so if anybody's got any questions, by all means chase Jesse up. You can wave his hand if you've got questions about that. But unless there's anything else specific, I might call the meeting to a close, and if there are any other questions people want to raise, once, twice. Thank you very much for coming along. We'll see you next month. Cheers.